You are listening to Oh My Health, There Is Hope podcast.
When your heart is aching and your world is shaking, don't give up. No, don't give up.
Hello and welcome to Oh My Health, There Is Hope, the podcast. I'm your host, Jana Short, and today we're here with Tim Kellis. Renowned Wall Street analyst Tim Kellis takes on what could be considered society's biggest problem today, divorce. The journey that led to him tackling such a significant issue with both personal and professional. After a successful career that eventually landed him on Wall Street, Tim met what he thought was the girl of his dreams, only to see that relationship end with bitterness and anger. The journey included work with a marital therapist. And after he discovered that the therapist wasn't really helping, who's been there, like I have, decided to tackle the issues himself. He is here to teach couples how to create lifelong marriages, something that is unheard of these days. A friend of mine's parents just celebrated their 60th anniversary, so there is hope. It takes work. Tim, thank you so much for being here today.
My pleasure, Jana. Thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to come and chat. I love talking about this. It's a great conversation.
I know. I cannot wait. I have so much to ask you. But before I do, we always ask our guests to share a story of hope with all of our listeners. Do you want to share a story of hope today?
Well, I'll start with the pain part of the story, and then that gives the hope. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. I actually do not have a psychology background. I have an engineering degree, an MBA, and I was the first semiconductor analyst on Wall Street to focus on communications market. That's my background. You kind of read that. Oh, the other part of my background, Jana, I got to tell you, when I was 12 years old, I told my mom I wanted to be a Catholic priest when I was 12 years old. And then I discovered girls, so that whole career path kind of got derailed. But so the point is, in 2000, at the height of the market, I met this girl that I thought I was going to spend the rest of my life with. In fact, it was a girl I'd known for like 8 years. She always had a boyfriend, I always had a girlfriend, but we got together without being in a relationship. And for any of you that has ever fallen in love knows it happens very quickly. It happened very quickly for us. We got together very quickly, and then we started fighting. But more importantly, as you mentioned in the intro, going to the therapist and like you said, it's amazing when it doesn't work, but it wasn't working. It wasn't really, it's all behavioral advice, which doesn't work. But it was the pain of that relationship ending. I know we all go through it, but for me dealing with it personally, and the reason for the Wall Street background is I'm very analytical. So the hope is, for your question, is that there is actually a body of knowledge that you can learn that will teach you how to stay together in a successful marriage for the rest of your life. And that is the hope that I'm introducing into society. As you said, it's a lot of painful relationships out there now, but I'm here to teach people how to make it successful.
I feel like this generation goes into marriage now with a thought in their head: if it doesn't work, I can get a divorce. And they're entering in preparing for failure, which surprises me, because I remember years ago when I got married the first time, I thought it was going to be forever. I never thought about divorce. As a matter of fact, we didn't even think about prenups because there was no exit unless you're dead.
Right.
Now, like, we're preparing in advance for, by the way, I'm a huge fan of prenups. I think that it's a good thing. But having said that, it shouldn't be planning for the end. I mean, it just should be planning for the future like a will. So I love that this new generation's thinking that. But what I don't like is that they're thinking, I don't have to be all in. I don't have to make this work. I don't have to, because I have a super easy out and I'll start over.
Super easy at the beginning until you've gone through that divorce. I've never, ever, ever heard anybody say, boy, that divorce process was fun. People are glad they got out of the marriage, but the process, nobody ever enjoys the process. It's an extremely, extremely painful process to go through.
I agree. So what kind of people do you work with? Because honestly, I will say, I think we give up too easily. Having said that, there are absolutely some people who should give up, who maybe if they spent more time on the front end before they took those vows, would realize that wasn't their person. But who are the people who who are coming to you, who are trying to make their marriage work, who have still some hope in that. And it does take two. I'm telling you, if only one person's doing the work, the only person that's going to get better is you.
Well, first, the way I work with people, if there's fear in your marriage, whatever you're afraid of is going to happen. Just to go back to your point about the whole prenup, but I get asked all of the time, maybe this marriage is just not meant to be. And the way I answer that question is, if you were truly in love at the beginning, then that marriage is meant to be. And so that is it. So as far as the type of people that I'm working with, the reality is I can anybody that's really, again, in love at the beginning of the marriage, I can show that couple how to go the right direction, why they're not going in that direction, and what to do about that. I will tell you, it is an intellectual endeavor. And so people that are more curious about learning are ones who will be more receptive and more successful with learning what I am teaching as far as a type of person to work with. And other than that, I can honestly tell you that if the couple was in love at the beginning, I can get that marriage back on track, and I can keep that marriage on that track for the rest of their lives. That is what I do.
So, Tim, here's the thing. I think that terminology is a little tricky because we all think we're in love at the beginning of the marriage, right? But sometimes some people don't even know what love really looks like and what it is. And so when you say if they were in love at the beginning of their marriage, you can teach them to make it work. That might not be the case if it's somebody who is young, maybe they were raised in an abusive family, and so love to them is being abused, and then they can't take it anymore, or they just don't understand what that relationship is. So how do you mean if they're in love when they get married?
Well, let me answer the question this way, Jana. Let me explain to you what love is. Okay, and understanding what love is then gives you some insight on whether that is what's taking place at the beginning of the marriage. Love is vulnerability. Vulnerability is the fear of getting hurt. What you do when you fall in love is you actually get over that wall of fear, and you actually start then exposing things about yourself. At the beginning, the professionals call it the false facade. You put your best foot forward, as you should be, because you're trying to impress each other. But the reality, what I teach, this is the longer version, the longer term journey, is to be able to expose some of those things about your past that you're not so proud of. In fact, your example that you just used, if a woman was abused as a child and she gets married young, that psychological trauma can be healed if she gets to the level of maturity where she's able to discuss it with her husband. Because remember, when two people get married, they both, independent of each other, decide that they each want to spend the rest of their lives with the other person. That's the psychological commitment that allows the whole vulnerability or exposing things about yourself to occur. And so, I mean, I'm caveating your response on whether they were really in love or not. I can tell you, I call them the two false gods, looks and money. If you are only interested in somebody else because they are attractive to you, or they are wealthy or have money to support you, I will say those are the only two examples that I know of where somebody is qualifying that they are in love for reasons that are not love. Because love is an internal experience. When we fall in love, we have an internal psychological connection with somebody. And those are, unfortunately, our society today is defined as important character traits. I'm on Clubhouse. I can't tell you how many times the conversation boils down to sex and money. Those are the two things that people talk about on Clubhouse. Those are the two biggest issues that people deal with in marriage. But what I'm doing is I'm teaching the more important internal maturity, personal development stuff that people need to understand that they're supposed to be going through within their marriage. But these are the things that people don't understand when they get into it. Nobody's teaching this. Nobody is explaining to people marriage from a psychological and mental perspective. And once they learn that, they will know the path that they should be on in order for that marriage to be successful. But I will still go back to, if they were truly in love at the beginning, then that marriage can be taught on how it could be successful. In fact, I get into, if you want, I can elaborate, but I get into psychologically what happens when two people fall in love, which is why you understand how special that relationship is with that person you fall in love with.
I will tell you, most of the people I know who've gone through divorces, when I ask them what that final straw was, it was always something that was a problem before they got married. And women, you're the worst. I'm sorry. And I'm speaking of myself. We are nurturers and we want to fix everybody. And we say to ourselves, once we get married, that'll be different. He'll change. I can make him do this by changing him. And we can't change anyone but ourselves. Like, that's the only person we have the power to change is ourselves. And I see more marriages fail for the reason they shouldn't have got into it to begin with at the very beginning, because they keep thinking that marriage will solve it all. Once they're married, they will change. Everything will be different. Do you see that ever working out?
Well, let me elaborate on what you just said, okay, so that we can expound on this conversation. So the before the 60s, the man was in charge. The man was responsible for the logical part of the relationship, and the man that did the finances. The woman was subordinate to the man. The woman was responsible for the emotional side of the relationship. The woman nurtured the children, raised the children, and was responsible for the environment of the house, okay? And so the point is, in 1970, less than 1% of all law and medical degrees went to women. By 1990, that number was over half. So women are just as educated as men are. Okay, there's nobody has any intelligence, an ounce of intelligence will question the education of women. Now, whether you know the barriers or whatever, there's still room for improvement, but women are educated. Women are employable, women are educated. That's the reason for the problem. And I say this from a productive perspective, because women have questioned their subordinate role, and now it's the man is no longer in charge. That's why I say the solution is equality. But the point is that historically speaking, women are the emotional side of the relationship. And when you say that the woman wants to nurture the relationship, that's actually supposed to be happening. The man is supposed to be learning how to be more emotional, and since the woman is better at it, the man can learn from the woman. Now, bear in mind, okay, you're repeating what society is saying today, okay, because what you said is not out of the blue, okay? The notion of change. We all change. Yeah. The psychology industry is based on the biology theory. The biology theory, for one, states that we are animals, that we cannot think, and it's promoting, there's been a debate that's gone on for thousands of years of God's will versus free will. God's will is referred to as predestination. Everything in our life is already determined for us. We are hardwired. We're nothing but robots living a robotic life. That is the psychological reality of God's will and predestination, that there's nothing we can do to change our world. The notion of hardwiring, for example. I was thinking about this a couple of hours ago. Hardwiring is the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. We are not hardwired. But we hear it all of the time. If you've ever changed your mind, Chinese, yeah, well, no, I want Italian. You have just disproven the hardwired conversation. We are all changing. We are all going to change. It's whether we want to change for the better or for the worse. Change is a reality of life. Yes, you are supposed to be helping your husband change, and your husband's supposed to be helping you change. Change is inevitable. One thing I can guarantee you, except for those of you that are already dead in place, and that is 5 years from now, you are going to be a much different person than you are today. That is true for all of us that are developing or regressing, because reality is you do one or the other. The mind is never stagnant. The mind is either growing or shrinking or whatever you're focused on. That's the way the mind works. But this notion, again, you're repeating society's belief because the psychology industry has trained us that change is not going to happen, that people don't change. That is, I'll just say BS. You can add the rest of those words to it, that notion that we don't change. That is a ridiculous concept. And I can't believe that we still are buying into this notion that we're not going to change. That is going to happen whether you like it or not.
So I 100% agree with you. I hope you don't think I was saying that we don't change. We literally change.
No. You're just, again, this notion that you can't change a person. You
Right.
can. I have a really good friend, a marriage expert, female marriage expert. Her whole notion, let me real quick. Her whole notion is how to teach women to use their emotional powers, their feminine powers, to help pull their man up. Our relationships today are managed by what I call the lowest common denominator, which is the person with the biggest insecurity is the one that controls the relationship. What I'm teaching is the highest common denominator is the one that's going to control, for the lack of a better word, but direct, lead, progress the relationship by holding hands with their partner who's not quite as mentally developed, as mature as they are, but that can teach them by the love that the two of them have created at the beginning on how they can learn to grow together. They just need to be trained in order to know how to do that.
Again, I agree with you. I think my only issue is when I go into any kind of relationship, a business relationship, a friendship relationship, a marriage, I don't expect them to change for me, but I also am not going to change for someone else. I change for me.
No, what you just described is referred to as codependency.
Yes.
Okay, what codependency is when I have this subjective desire that is not the best for our marriage, yet I'm able to control you to change. For example, let me give you a simple example. This girl that I fell in love with, that I wanted to spend the rest of my life with, again, I'm not finding fault or blaming anybody. I am very proud of my music collection. I have 48 hours of over 600 songs that were each individually, alternative rock, Dave Matthews, U2, music like that. This girl was big into jazz, which is no big deal, but she did not like my music. So I was not allowed to play my music when I was in her presence. So when we broke up, what was one of the first things that I did? Got to listen to my music again. That is me complying to her insecurity, because the reality is, why wouldn't she want to listen to I listen to her music. I loved it. I would get into it, but it wasn't. And again, this is where control comes into the conversation. It's not a matter of my music. It's a matter of people need to control their partner. That's where the codependency comes in. What I am talking about is what's in my best interest. Promoting what's in my best interest. Again, if you and I are married and you're more mature than me, if it's good that I go out and get a job instead of sleeping on the couch 8 hours a day, you're trying to help me realize that if I want to be a better person, I should get a job. You're not trying to make me to comply to your subject. Of course I should get a job. You're trying to help me benefit me. That's the kind of change that I'm talking about.
I love that you clarified that. So thank you. I want to talk about, again, the people that are coming to you for help and looking to save their marriage. By the way, before you give up, you should always seek some sort of help. And I will tell you, I too went to a marriage counselor, and it was the worst. Not only was it the worst, we did it together. So when they gave us assignments, if he faltered on doing his assignment because he was too busy, the first thing I would show up with my arms crossed, right? My lips all thinned out because I'm mad. And as soon as she said, "How did it go?" Well, he didn't even do anything he was told to do. Like, he's not even trying. And it just was horrible. I think you should always go separately. Seeking that kind of counseling, but it was a disaster. When we finally got in the car on, I think, our 5th or 6th time, I was like, this is making things worse. Like, I don't want to do this. He's like, neither do I. I'm only doing it because you asked me to be here. And I realized, like, wow, like, he's willing to do something that miserable because he wants to make it work too. And it really kind of opened up our doors for talking back and forth to each other and getting things out. But what can they be doing to, like, I know you have groups, I know you have places where they can start getting advice. And by the way, and I'm not an expert in this field, believe me, I've been married before, but it's always start working on yourself. Like, how do you work on yourself to keep being the better you, showing up as a better you? For you, not for someone else or for your marriage. But as you start getting that confidence and you start not needing that control because you're confident, right? When he goes out and he's an hour late, right? You're confident because you know this your man, he loves you and he's honest. And so working on ourselves is huge. But what can they do when they're trying to save their marriage?
Well, first of all, let me calm down a second from the story that you just told about the psychology industry. And because that is one of the things that I realize that I'm doing. It's amazing. I'm going to start speaking in front of large crowds, and I'm visualizing these conversations, large crowds. One of the questions I'm asked, who wants to be happily, who thinks that if you're not happily married, you should go see a marriage therapist? And most people raise their hand. We have problems, go see a therapist. And then I'm going to ask, and how many of you actually know what takes place in a therapist office? Nobody knows what goes on in a therapist office. Nobody knows what the goal is. Nobody knows what the objective. Nobody knows what is supposed to happen in a therapy. We all go in blindly. And one of the things I'm doing is I'm explaining what is going on in a therapist office and what is supposed to go on in a therapist office. What is going on in a therapist office is behavioral advice, like the 5 love languages. Let's just finally admit that behavioral advice doesn't work. If you're going to a therapist office and they're giving you behavioral advice, and then the other thing they do, it's called cognitive behavioral therapy. It's the how does it make you feel question. You could literally go to a therapist for years and talk about the fight that you and your husband had last week, and they will continue to do that. It's cognitive behavioral therapy. How does it make you feel? It literally does not talk at all about background issues. The only reason why I can comfortably and confidently tell anybody that I have solved the marriage problem is because I forgave my parents when I was 25 years old. It turns out we're supposed to be born twice. The first is obvious, biologically. But the second is when we're supposed to be born psychologically into adulthood. The bar mitzvah and the bat mitzvah in the Jewish tradition, the first communion in the Christian tradition, the quinceañero I've learned in South Florida in the Latino tradition, but they all happen too young. But those are all initiation ceremonies to initiate us into adulthood. This is the personal development step that you start with before you get to do all of the rest of the personal development stuff. When you let go of your childhood, a balanced ego is not when you're better than anybody else. It's when you're better than you used to be. That is the billion-dollar question that we're all trying to figure out. But what's important, John, to understand is if you don't go through that healing process, the first people that define you are who? Your parents. And until you disconnect, you're going to be defining who you are based on what they have told you about who you are. And you cannot become your own person until you cut those strings. This is the personal development that's supposed to be going on. So when you're going to a therapist office, if they're not addressing your issues with your parents from day one, they're wasting your time. But this is what we need to understand that we should be doing as far as the mental work that we're supposed to be going into. And again, what I teach couples is then you also have a partner that's there to cry on their shoulders. I cried when I forgave my parents. Forgiveness is not a logical experience. It is a release of emotions. I called my mom up after I realized, because what I did was I finally saw it from their perspective. I love you guys. You guys did the best. I mean, I'm not in prison. They did a good job with me. I'm a good person. I mean, my parents, and my dad was a cab driver. They were very simple. But you cannot go through that healing process logically. You've got to release the emotions that were all there in order for you to be able to look at what you're doing today objectively, which is what I do, is I take the subjectivity of the individual out of the dialogue once they realize, how they're able to mature and look at the situation objectively without those influences from the past. And the only way you can do that is to heal. So I hope that answers your question.
It does. But I do want some clarity on something. It's going to be my last question for you. But what I want to know is, are you saying There is never a reason for divorce. All marriages can be saved.
Where there is love at the beginning, yes, that is exactly what I'm saying. Okay. And it's just because you got to understand, if we were to canvass relationships in this country that are not working, or relationships that are not working, I will not say 100% of them, but I will say pretty close to 100% of them. The problem is control. Is one or both are trying to control the relationship. Once you eliminate the control mechanism, where there are no distinctions, there can be no superiority. Perfect equality affords no temptation for abusive control. This is what they've not been taught yet, what equality means. But if you fall in love at the very beginning, yes. If you are taught how to create a marriage where it's a partnership, where you learn to take on the world instead of taking on each other, yes, you can learn how to create a successful marriage for the rest of your life. And I know, again, the reason for your question is it's so many people have come. Why do people get divorced? It didn't work out. Are you kidding me? That is the discussion. That is how deep we understand about why people get divorced. People have no psychological understanding, not in general, on why divorce takes place. This is what I've been able to dissect on understanding what those dynamics that take place that create a marriage, or that break a marriage up, so that we can keep that from happening. But yes, if they learn what they need to understand in order to be successful, they will be successful. So again, I will always fall back to that answer, Jana. I've answered it a couple of times, that if you were in love at the beginning, that marriage can be taught. But I will tell you this, okay? When somebody says, I love you, but I'm not in love with you, okay? The mind is not stagnant. The mind is either growing or shrinking. And when you first connect, you build this huge bond between you and that other person. It's called love. I call it death by 1,000 swords. If you are not growing, you are shrinking, because the mind is not stagnant. So when you go argument, every time you argue, you are shrinking the connection that the two of you had together. And I will tell you, when somebody says, I love you, but I'm not in love with you, that's when the job has been finished. You have, I could guess, and I'm sure I will be right, but you have no more emotions towards your ex-husband, because those feelings have completely evaporated. Now, in order, if you're thinking about this from your own personal, how would I get back with my ex? I hate the guy. I mean, he's not, he just did all this. But you would have to start over from the beginning and because right now the feelings between the two of you are completely gone. There are no more bonds between you and your ex, right? There's no feelings together. You have to go, but you did create those feelings at the very beginning, and you can, because the connection that the two of you had at the beginning is the same character traits that you guys probably have today to get back together. But again, that's what you went through. Yesterday's news. If you live with rear view mirrors on your shoulders, you're going to run the walls. So we're talking about new relationships where you don't have all that baggage, all that other stuff going forward.
I kind of agree, but I have children with my ex, so I absolutely love him as much as I did the day before. I still want to live with him.
I'm just talking generically.
Yes,
Again, I'm not putting words
100%.
in your mouth.
I don't have romantic feelings for him
Right.
anymore, but I definitely have a lot of love for him. And I wouldn't go back there for sure. But having said that, I don't know that I necessarily agree with you that all marriages can be saved or should be. Having said that, I think all marriages are worth trying to save. 100%. Like, we just give up too soon, and we don't go that extra mile because it's work. And I just feel like everyone should try to save their marriage. If you're in a marriage and it is scary, crazy right now, or you're just wondering, why am I still here? Try something like this and see if working on yourself, working on the issues, understanding what that language is you're talking to each other about, and seeing if you can still survive through that, or create something beautiful, or find those connections again that started you falling in love at the beginning.
Right.
It's so funny when people cheat, and which, by the way, I think is a huge reason why people give up on their marriages. And I don't think that is a reason to give up on your marriage. But having said that, When people cheat, it's not because they're looking for a prettier you, a thinner you, a smarter you. Do you remember when you first fell in love with your husband and it was like, oh my gosh, he's so smart, and you're showing him off and you look at him, you're like, oh my gosh, your eyes are so blue, you're so smart. And then you're married and you're picking up his underwear and you're washing the dish that he left, and the stuff stuck to it. And you're screaming at him, like, I tell you one more time to leave your shoes here. And they are looking for that feeling again. They're searching. What happened to the love? Like, where did it go? And it's okay, because we all do that. We all get caught in that. But we have to remember, like, when they go cheating on you, it's because they're looking for that rise in feeling that they got from us at one point. That you're so smart, you're so handsome, you're this, you're amazing, you can do anything. And they get home and we're like, yeah, not anymore.
Can I add to that?
100%.
Infidelity is not the cause of problems in your marriage. Infidelity is the result of problems in your marriage. In fact, when you understand the right path you're supposed to be on, infidelity is so far out of view that it's not even in consideration. In fact, the way I kind of think about this is when both of you are comfortable in your own skin. I love the thought of a guy pointing out all of the hot guys for his wife to look at, and for the girl to point out all of the hot girls for her husband to look at. When they get in that level of comfort, knowing that, I hate to tell you this, but you're beautiful. Women are beautiful. That's just, that to me is a fact of life. Women are works of art. And but somebody looking at somebody of the opposite sex doesn't mean that they're wanting to sleep with them if their marriage is successful. But when the marriage is off track, we all know we want to be happy. And if we're not happy within our marriage, we're going to find it elsewhere. Overeat, watch television, sleep with other people. We all know we want to be happy, and we've got to find that happiness within our marriage, or else we're going to find it elsewhere.
By the way, I think that is perfectly said. I'm so glad you added that. Tim, where can people find you? Like, where can they connect with you? Because we want to save your marriage, but we want you to save your marriage by doing the work.
Well, the first and easiest way is to email me. My email address is my name, Tim Kellis, Kellis as in Sam, at happyrelationships, plural.com. So Tim Kellis at happyrelationships.com. Another great way to connect with me, go on Facebook. The name of the group is called The Marriage Support Group. In fact, we just went over 14,000 members just in the last day on this group. And one of the reasons, I'll keep this part short, one of the reasons why the group has been successful is because I allow other marriage experts to contribute to the dialogue. No other marriage group in Facebook Live, because they think it's soliciting, they are the only ones who contribute from a professional perspective. But in my group, you have all kinds of people pitching their services, giving guidance, giving advice. So the dialogue in my group is much more productive. It's because without that dialogue, it's all, my husband left me, my wife's cheating on me, it's all the negative, and then everybody piles on, and it's just a pity party. But what my group is doing is it's adding this, but why don't you do this? Why don't giving that sort of guidance that people are looking for? So go to the Marriage Support Group on Facebook and connect with me on there. But again, the easiest is Tim Kellis at happyrelationships.com.
And we're going to put all of those links into the show notes. You can connect with Tim very easily. I strongly recommend that you do, because if you get a divorce and you didn't fix the problem, I'm promising you'll take it into the next relationship and the next relationship. I used to call those girls with bad pickers. Why do they always pick the same situation? Because they hadn't fixed what was going on with themselves, getting back, like you said, the root cause of as they're growing up and all the things they're bringing in. And until you fix that, you too will have a bad male or female picker, partner picker, because you need to fix something much deeper to release all that.
I'm in 80 relationships with 40 women. Who is the common denominator, right? Figure it out that maybe it's not the other person. That is a big thing to learn. People, it's so easy. Jan, it's all your fault. Well, maybe Tim had something to do with it. This is kind of funny, Jana. I have never, ever talked to a couple about a conflict where it was 100% one person's fault. That has never happened. Yet people think that they're the one who is perfect and their partner is 100% in the wrong. They both are contributing to the problems. That is always the case when I work with couples.
By the way, I think that's always the case in any relationship or anything that goes wrong. You have to take some accountability for whatever part you played in receiving it, doing it, whatever that was. A lot of times I found when there was issues, it was just the way I received it and there really wasn't anything going on. So
exactly.
Yes.
You want to love him. He wants to love you. This is what's so counterintuitive at the surface about this conversation. Two people fall in love, but they don't work it out. And it's like you both want the same thing. You keep in mind, Jana, there's only one person in your life, who's supposed to have the same goal as you. And that is your spouse. Not your kids, your friends, your coworkers, your parents. Nobody else in your life is supposed to have the same goals as you except your spouse. That makes the conversation so simple when you realize it from that perspective.
I love it. It's a perfect place to leave this. You guys are going to put everything in the show notes. You can connect with Tim. Tim, thank you so much for being on the show. It was amazing having you.
Jana, again, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to come speak. My mission is to lower the divorce rate, and I can't do it by myself. So again, I can't thank you enough for allowing me to come in and speak here. And I hope that people can get some real valuable help with this.
Well, that's exactly what the show's all about. And that's a beautiful mission to get behind. So thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Oh My Health, There Is Hope podcast. Make sure to visit Jana's website, bestholisticlife.com, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Google Play, or listen there, so you'll never miss an episode. While you're at it, if you found value in the show, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes, or if you simply tell a friend about the show, that'll help too. Let's change the world together, one health expert at a time. Looking forward to seeing you next time.